It is party time, ladies and gentlemen. January 20. I can't believe it's the 22nd of January of 2025 already. But I'm not going to complain because that means I'm, maybe a few weeks closer to maybe getting on the water sometime this year while everybody else is out smashing the fish down south, except for everybody who's out playing in the snow today. Chad, what is up, my brother?
Well, I don't have an excuse other than I've been sick. I haven't been on the water this year, so
Yep.
I'm getting to sit here and watch Austin just climb up the leaderboard. He's out there smashing them, and I'm here stuck, with fever and the shivers. But it's getting better. I should round the corner next week and be able to get back out there and do my thing. And
Oh,
got
yeah.
out
Well, I
yesterday,
mean,
spent some
you've
time
gotten a lot
outside, and then
done.
towards the end of
You probably needed to be off of the water, doing what you've been doing. As much as I know you want to be out chasing tanks, it's probably a
it
good
worked.
idea that you've been able to get everything done that you have been over the last few weeks anyway. So, yeah,
It,
it's
it worked
how it
out.
works.
It worked
Yeah.
out. It's one of those things where sometimes God knows what you need to do, whether you want to or not. Kind of smacks you down so that you can get the things you need to get done.
Yeah.
So,
Did you ever think you'd be living vicariously through your son who's out smashing giant fish?
um, what's funny is I've actually been living vicariously through him a big part of his life because if we do this the way we know we do it, a big part of it is sharing it with other people.
Yep.
And I've watched him go from a 4-year-old kid who misses a fish on topwater and legitimately drops his rod and cries like a baby to now, going out there and right now he's got the lead in the total 22-inch total for the year, which of
Yep.
course I think once Florida kind of gets their gear, it's going to be. But we're going to go to Florida as well, so we'll see how it all plays out.
Okay.
He's definitely put the time in. Now he's out there scoping. Let's make no mistake about it. There's going to be a lot of people that are like, "Oh yeah, of course he's." But I mean, there's plenty of people out there with live scope that are scoping around and not catching anything. So he's
Oh,
he's
yeah.
definitely put the time in. But let's go to the other end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum being at the end of tonight's live stream, we're going to give away some juicy prizes for the Catch 22, and we'll talk about the Catch 22, the Torquedo Top 10, and some of the other initiatives that are out there, like the State Record Series. But let's bring it back to the ground, and let's talk about kayak fishing 101, getting started in kayak fishing. One of the things that you alluded to is about me getting a lot of stuff done. And a lot of that's been getting back in that members only group and starting to cultivate a lot of the conversations, the updates, the upgrades. And the thing that I think we've all done as an industry, with the exception of a big Facebook group called Kayak Fishing for Beginners. And if you haven't joined that group yet, do it, because whether you're a beginner, an intermediate angler, or even a seasoned pro, you can help other people by getting into that group. So I highly suggest, if you haven't done so yet, get into that group. But I spent a bunch of time in there over the last couple of weeks, and I realized there's still a lot of questions, about getting started that a lot of us who have this much gray in our beard and who've been doing it for a long time, kind of take for granted. And I just think that there's an opportunity to kind of bring it back to the beginning. And even for some of us older dudes that have been around doing it for a long time, to go back to, not necessarily going out with a forward-facing sonar and a motor and $10,000 worth of electronics every time you get in the boat, but grab a couple of rods, a couple packs of lures, and a boat and a paddle, and of course your PFD, and get out there and get back to the basics of it. So the conversation that I wanted to have tonight was big on what you need to get started, but also welcome commentary into the live stream about what are the topics that we need to delve a little deeper into. And one of those that I'll say right out of the gate, we won't be able to do service to tonight, but we're going to use it for one of our monthly live streams, is getting more into safety, especially when it comes to fishing cold water. And there's nobody better to cover that topic than KBF's own and a friend of mine for almost 20 years, maybe even a little over 20 years, Jeff Little. So we'll bring Jeff on, and we'll bring on some other industry experts to talk about different topics instead of it just being the Chad and JT show. Not that anything wrong with that. I know you guys love us, but just to mix it up a little bit. And so tonight I want to talk about, the basics of getting started, and then some of the things that I think we overlook. Like one of the things we always talk about, what do you need to get started? We're always talking about gear. But tonight I want to focus a little bit on what knowledge and skill sets you need when you first start getting started in kayak fishing. And so let's have the discussion about the gear first. I'm a big fan of not waiting until you can afford a premium kayak, because no matter how much money you save, you can't buy yesterday. So get the best possible kayak that you can afford. Think about how much of its resale value it's going to preserve, unless you plan on fully using it to get started and then buying another boat later and then using that boat as your buddy boat. But buy the boat that'll meet your needs, that maybe won't do everything you want it to do, and then get out there and start fishing. Because the fish you caught, you didn't catch yesterday, you can't make up for tomorrow. So get out there, get on the water, start experiencing it. Look for opportunities to hook up with another angler that maybe has already done that evolution, that has that buddy boat. Make a post in the KBF members only group or the kayak bass fishing group. Hey guys, I live in Crooked Elbow, Arkansas. I'm willing to travel. Is there anybody got a spare boat and they're going out anytime soon? I'll pay for your gas money if you'll, let me go out with you and borrow your entry level boat. And I think we also need to offer that if we are blessed with that opportunity. When we have those extra things, we should try to share. One of the things that I'm going to do this year is I'm going to say, a lot of times in the summer, for example, I'll go out and fish from about 2 hours before daylight to about 10. Then I'll go hang a hammock up and chill out during the really hot part of the day, and then get back out there for the last 3 or 4 hours into the first couple hours after dark. Well, I got that whole middle of the day that I'm not driving all the way back home. So I'm going to post up and say, hey guys, I'm going to be at, Seabolt boat ramp in Gunnersville, Alabama. And my kayaks will be available for demo from 11 to 3. You know what I mean? And then folks can come out and they can try the boats out and learn a little bit more about the sport. And then maybe I'll bring an extra boat sometimes and say, hey, if you want to join me, I'll have an extra boat. Please RSVP. Those are things that I think we can all do to kind of introduce more people into the sport. And maybe you've got a decent entry level boat, but you want to try out that next level buddy boat. You could just meet up with somebody and try their boat out to see if it's worth that extra investment before you, drop your hard-earned cash on it. But I will say this, the first 3 things that you really need, the 3 core things that you really need, is you need a paddle. I don't care if you got a pedal drive. I don't care if you got a motor. Get a paddle. Get a decent paddle. Get the best paddle you can afford. You need a PFD, and not a PFD that you're going to stick in the back of the boat, but one you'll actually wear, whether that's inflatable or your traditional Type 3 or Series 70 PFD or level 70. And you need the kayak. So you need a kayak, you need a PFD, and you need a paddle. That's really all you need. Everything else is kind of wants. You can get into all of the wants and the extras and all that other stuff. But to truly get out there and enjoy what we all enjoy, the sport of kayak fishing, all you need is a paddle, a PFD, and a kayak. And in many of the best places to catch these big old bucket mouth, bug-eyed, pot-bellied, cankle-tailed green fish that we catch, you just need a couple rods and you need a couple of lures.
Yep.
And you need to get into the places that other people can't get into. So the next thing that you need, because again, we could have gear discussions, and I really would like to take this gear discussion over to both of our YouTube channels, because I know we're creating a lot of content about that this year, where we can truly dive deeper into it. And we can have these discussions in the KBF members only page and in the kayak bass fishing, the public group. But I want to talk tonight about skill sets that I think you need, right? I think that you need to know how to paddle. Too many times I see people shying away from paddling because they think it's hard. And paddling is no harder than walking if you do it right. Some of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they lean their seat back. So when they're leaning back, they're holding their arms way out in front of them. They're in like a half crunch. They got their quads flexed. They got their calves flexed. They got their lower back gored up in an angle position. And it's not that paddling's hard. You're doing it wrong. So if you use your foot braces and you scoot your butt back and your hips are under your shoulders or your shoulders slightly forward of your hip line, you're going to be more comfortable. And then if you go watch a few videos, I'll recommend my video on how to paddle a fishing kayak. I'll also recommend Ken Whiting, who's my longtime friend and the original producer of my show, who has paddle tails. Go watch some of the videos on how to align your knuckles with the blade, how to use the grease on one hand, the glue on the other hand, or the glue on one hand, the grease on the other hand. Learn how to knife edge your blade on the upstroke so the wind's not catching it. Learn how to pull through, rotate your paddle blade as you take it out. I see people all the time sticking their paddle blade in the water, and behind them, they're pushing, trying to pull the blade up out of the water broadside, which is creating all this extra resistance. And that's what's making you think paddling will tire you. To be honest with you, paddling is less effort than pedaling, because when you're pedaling, you're using your quads, you're using your hip flexors, you're using your obliques, you're using your calves. You're actually using all the largest muscle groups on your body. It's just that we intuitively know how to do our feet like this or like this, so it's not real hard to get right. And so I think a lot of people think pedaling's easier because of the fact that it's more intuitive. But if you spend just a tiny bit of time investing in learning how to paddle, it'll blow your mind how effortless it is. Plus, I feel like if you get good at learning how to paddle, you'll master managing your boat position way faster, because you understand what everything in the stroke does to the movement of the boat. And you have to do way less effort with a paddle and way quieter effort with a paddle to reposition your boat than you need to with a motor or with a pedal drive. I see people trying to fish a dock and they're back, and they backpedal, and then they pull up and they do all these 15 maneuvers. Bro, if there was a fish on that dock, by the time you did all that craziness, that sucker's either gone or it's now so wary that it's not going to bite. And then the same thing with motors. Even though I'm a big fan of motors, I use them. I still paddle more than most people that I know. The next skill set that I want to talk about, because I do think the paddling is the most important, but sometimes we only think about the water part of the sport of kayak fishing. But there's the getting to the water part and the getting on the water part that I think we overlook a lot of times. For example, I see people all the time working way too hard to load and unload their kayak, especially if they don't have a trailer. And, you know, I've been kayak fishing 30 years in November, so a little over 30 years. And I didn't have a trailer for probably, I mean, Austin's 25. I think I might have got the first trailer when he was like 12 or 13. So I've only had a kayak about half the time, probably about 15 of the 30 years. So I loaded and unloaded the kayak a lot. And I see people struggling with the concept. And so I created how to load your fishing kayak on top of an SUV, how to load it into the truck, and how to load it on the trailer videos. And I'm going to revisit that this year. And I actually posted in the group about it the other day, asking what things should I add to this video. And I got some really valuable insight into it. Like, you know, don't just cover boat ramp launching with a kayak, because most of us who don't have a trailer launch places other than a boat ramp with that kayak more than we do at a boat ramp. So I'm going to cover that. But a lot of it is not intuitive. You know, I'm going to be straight up with you. When I first started kayak fishing, it took me 10 years before I figured out, don't just run your kayak up onto the bank where you're sitting on the keel and it's all wobbly. I probably fell out of my kayak on the bank 2 or 3 times before I figured that out. But what happened was, is I brought the kayak in one time to put it up on a cart, and I can't get the cart on the back of the kayak when it's under the water. So all I did is pull it up parallel to the bank, picked it up, set it on the cart, and then went to the truck. And then the light bulb went off. It was almost like that face palm moment, like, holy crap, putting the kayak at the boat ramp or at the water's edge parallel first, and then getting in it and then turning and going away is way smarter. Plus, it preserves that leading edge of your boat where that keel wants to run into the ramp. And when you got that one little spot that hits all the time, that's the number one spot where people damage their fishing kayaks. I hear the warranty horror stories about it all the time. I only had my kayak 6 months and it wore through in the front and they won't replace it. Well, of course they won't replace it. That kayak that's not a manufacturer's defect. It's like if you took a marker or a pencil and sit there and scraped it on concrete. If you're our generation, you probably remember doing that, sharpening something on concrete by rubbing it back and forth. Well, if you rub your kayak back and forth, on the same spot, you're going to have a tendency to damage it. In fact, I see people do the same thing when they're loading their boat. They back their truck up, they grab their boat and they pick up on it and they slide it. Well, now you're sliding it with that one edge of the boat just being the only thing that's rubbing back and forth. And so I've covered that in a few videos, and I'm going to do some more blog posts and videos about it this year. But loading and unloading your kayak, launching and recovering your kayak, and then storing your kayak. That's probably some of the stuff you should have nailed down before you focus on just jumping out on the water. How to load it, how to unload it, how to store it, and how to take care of it are things you probably need to have figured out before you get to the water. So let me make sure we're still live because I saw Mr. JT go away there. Hello? Hello, hello. Well, I don't know if I'm gone or if I just lost JT because it looks like you guys are still there. Y'all comment if y'all can still hear me. Please comment if you can still hear old Chad. Somebody. Bueller. All right, cool. I'm hoping JT will jump back in here since I just said I got a message that everybody said I'm still good. So again, focus on some of that stuff that you need to know before you go. And then I would really focus on learning how to paddle. I would focus on learning how to get in and out of a kayak. Learn how to get in and out of your kayak if you happen to flip it before you focus on standing up, because standing up is probably one of the places where somebody's more likely to fall out of the kayak. So learn how to get back in your kayak before you focus on trying to stand up. And then, the next thing that I would say you need to learn and you need to master is casting from a kayak, managing boat position. And I know this sounds silly, but go out in your yard, set your kayak on the ground, set up a target or a bucket across the way, and actually practice casting sitting in a kayak. Learning how to not hit those rods that are behind you, learning how to cast back sidearm without hitting the bait on the water, which causes you to backlash, are all skill sets that, if mastered, prevent that frustration that you get from all of these things that us as kayak anglers who have been doing it a long time, when we go out and we see a new kayak angler do it, we kind of chuckle, because it's not that we're laughing at you, we're laughing with you, because we've all caught our rod on a back cast. We've all went back to skip a bait and hit the water back here, and then had a backlash that looked like, looked like a 1970s afro, and you were just like, oh my goodness. So
wrapped a jackhammer around a GoPro,
Exactly. Practice those off of the water skills. Think about boat position management. And then I'm going to give you what I consider probably one of the most overlooked tips that I can give you as a kayak angler when you first get started, that I constantly see people doing. And we're going to play this game like this is your fishing kayak right here, okay? I see guys, if this is their fishing kayak and they're trying to cast right here to the corner of the screen, they'll take their paddle and start moving their kayak like they're going to cast there. Then when they get to where they can cast, they start to cast. And then by the time they make the cast, they're like broadside, or they're facing the opposite direction because the wind is catching the back of their boat and spinning them around. If you can learn early on in your fishing career, and this is another reason that I think pedals start to excel in people's mind, is they can constantly be making adjustments without having to think about it, because it's more intuitive. But you can do the same thing with your fishing kayak, with a paddle kayak, but you should definitely think about it regardless of how your kayak is powered. And so if you take your paddle and you move your boat and you're getting your nose to start going like this, don't wait until it's where it's at to start to cast. And more importantly, position your kayak. And if you get the nose moving, take your paddle and dig it in and get rid of that resultant movement.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many times I see somebody coming up on a shoreline, and about where they get to the point where they need to cast, they'll stop paddling and they'll let their paddle down, and they'll still be going. They'll pick up the rod. By the time they cast, they're right on top of the target. They set the hook on the fish. It's like fighting a gorilla in a phone booth, and they lose the fish.
Yep.
So the first skill set is learning how to paddle. The second skill set is learning how to enter and exit your kayak off the water. The third skill set is learning how to enter and exit your kayak on the water. So that way you're prepared for the standing portion of fishing. Get into standing only after you're comfortable with this other part that I'm talking about, which is the mastery of boat position management. Like, get rid of resultant movement before you start to cast. So as you're coming to a spot, just start to drag your paddle blade a little bit and create a little drag, just on both sides so that you're not water bugging it out there on the water like this until you come to a halt. Now, I will tell you one thing that I'm blessed with, because I grew up left-handed in a right-handed world, but I see people struggling to, let's say I want to cast right over here. I've always got to have they always have to have their kayak in the perfect position to make the cast. Back to what I talked about, sitting in your kayak and practicing. Put the time in to learn how to cast with your offhand, both backhand, overhand, and open, sidearm, and then do the same thing with the other hand. I will tell you, fundamentally, the greatest investment you can make in yourself as a kayak angler is if you can learn how to cast with both hands, overhead, sidearm, and backhand, and you can do that with both hands. You pretty much open up not having to move your boat to make a cast, being in position to fight the fish, and not necessarily having to do so much movement to your boat that you spook the fish before you make the cast. If you're in a position, and you get more opportunities. If you're in a position, you're facing this direction, and a fish blows up back here, but you got to turn your boat all the way around to make a cast, that fish is probably gone, or you just spooked it by the time you get in position to make a cast. So I'm a big fan of learning how to cast with both hands, and always being cognizant of what's around you. If you look at the back of the fishing kayak, let's say that this is the back of the kayak, and then this is where I'm sitting right here in the middle. If this is the back, if my rods are in what I call the triangle for life, if they're between my shoulders and the tip of the boat, they're safe. It's when you stick the rod off to the side where you rear back and you catch it in your back cast. Also, if you lay your rods horizontal, the fastest way to break a rod is to lay it horizontally with the tip facing backwards. Even though it seems intuitive, even though it's one of them things where your handles are right there and your rod's behind you, but the fastest way to break a rod, break a guide, or maybe even break two rods is to lay your rods down horizontally if they are outside the width of the boat. If they're inside the width of the boat, you're usually pretty good. If they are outside the width of the boat, you are inevitably going to get out of position. You rear back to make a quick cast, boom, and then you're going to break the rod you're casting with, and most likely that rod that is stored horizontally. At least if they're out in front of you, you're aware of them, you can see them, and you can work around them fighting fish, and you're definitely not going to break them on the back cast. And I could sit here and ramble about this stuff for an hour, but to be honest with you, JT, it really is that simple. Yep. Focus on what you need to know before you go. Put a little bit of time, effort, and energy into selecting the best watercraft, paddle, and PFD you can first.
Yep.
Don't not go fishing just because you can't afford a $3,000 kayak. Invest in learning how to paddle. Invest in learning how to load, unload, launch, and recover your kayak so that you protect yourself from falling out the kayak and hurting yourself at the boat ramp. Because falling out the kayak out on the water might hurt your pride. Falling out the kayak on your forehead on the boat ramp will hurt more than your pride.
Oh, yeah.
And then focus on those little fundamental skill sets like boat position management, gear management on the water, and don't try to do everything all at once. And also don't be embarrassed to spend time practicing off the water. I can't tell you how many hours I've spent sitting in my backyard, especially when the kids were younger, and putting a couple of targets out in front of me and sitting in my kayak and flipping baits and skipping baits and just getting where I felt very proficient with the arcs of movement that the kayak allowed me to have, so that it all became second nature, so that it became muscle memory. Because you might be able to cast really well off the water. You might be able to cast really well, standing in your backyard. But until you practice it sitting down, it's a lot like bow hunting. When you bow hunt, there's tons of people that practice standing up, but they never practice shooting from their stand, and they never put themselves in a position where they're sitting down and they have to draw and shoot sitting down. So it's a lot of that is similar in bass fishing, kayak bass fishing. So Marty Hughes says it's a good idea to practice paddling before starting to fish. When I first got into kayak fishing, I spent about 10 years saying this right here: I'm not a paddler, I'm a fisherman. I'm not a paddler, I'm a fisherman. And one day I was fishing with Ken Whiting, and I looked at the camera. He was my producer at the time. And I said, hey, for all of you paddlers out there that are constantly trying to tell kayak fishermen to learn how to paddle, look, we didn't get in this thing to paddle. We got into it to fish, blah, blah, blah. And I was all proud of myself. I just made this profound statement. And then the segment's over and Ken puts the camera down. He goes, you want to know the big fallacy in that whole statement? I said, what's that? He goes, you probably paddle more than they do. And I'm paddling away like this, like, he said, actually, let me rephrase that. You beat the water into submission more than they do. I don't think I've seen you paddle since I met you. I was like, I was young and a little bit defensive. I was like, but I went out into what Marty's credit is when somebody, if I don't know the answer to something or if I get criticized about something, I'm going to go offline and become a damn expert in it so that the next time I don't get that uncomfortable feeling of not knowing something. That's kind of the way I've always been. So when we were done filming, I went and got my kayak and I threw it in the water and I just went and paddled. And I was like, let me practice, let me manage. And I should have known better. I was an aviation guy at the time. I was a pilot. I understood yawing an airplane to make it do this. I understand raising the nose makes it do this. Lowering the nose makes it do this. Let me apply that to kayak fishing. And it wasn't until I started learning how to paddle that I thought, man, if we could move the seat forward and aft, we could change these kayaks so they paddle better for dudes like us, big dudes. Hey, if we had more volume out away from center line, and when we started to lean, the boat wouldn't turn like it does now, or edge, because paddlers want that. As fishermen, we don't want that. So how do we avoid that? Okay, the standard design is lean it and edge it. We don't want to edge it. Let's put some volume out there so when we lean it, it don't turn as much, right? So the more I learned how to paddle, the better I was at contributing thoughts and ideas to the design process for what the evolution of fishing kayaks would be. The problem is I've created such good, or we have, but the people that I've worked with have created such good training wheels on modern fishing kayaks. Nobody ever has to learn how to ride the bike. Does that make sense? And so I really think we need to come back and focus on some of the basic fundamental skills and learning how to select a paddle, learning how to paddle a sit on top fishing kayak, learning how to paddle standing up. I can't tell you how many people I see grab the paddle shaft. Here's the blade up here, and they got their hands really close together and they're standing up trying to paddle their boat. I'm like, hey, put your hand on top of the blade where you got some leverage, grab the shaft and paddle. And you don't have to change back and forth from one side to the other. You can actually knife edge, and it's just like sculling, but with a standard kayak paddle. That's the topic for another day. We'll talk about intermediate and advanced, boat position management, where we've got some clips, because you and I really were talking earlier and we thought about doing this today. What I'd like to do in the future is prepare for it and then go out and have some drone shots and some images and some videos to demonstrate what we're talking about, so that these 22nd of every month sessions can be a lot better and a lot more beneficial to the members of the community. So I promise you we'll work towards that on the next couple of videos.
Yep. So one of the things I wanted to go back to, because a lot of the times when I started my channel is, especially talking to parents or grandparents, my golden rule was, you're going to take the kids fishing. You're not taking them fishing with you. You take them fishing. The same thing here. We actually ran into this a year before last when we had our Freedom Squad gathering. Our good friend, who's an active duty first sergeant out in California right now, Mr. Army Outdoors, he came out to our Freedom Squad gathering, and he's a boater. He had never been in a kayak. And before we started him fishing out of the kayak, we put him in the Old Town, gave him a PFD, gave him a paddle, and said, hey, go run around and, let's go learn how to paddle a kayak a little bit first. So if you're going to, the whole point of this is, if you're going to take somebody out kayak fishing with you and they've never been, take them out and get them the fundamentals of kayaking before you try putting a fishing pole in their hand and managing all that at first. 15, 20 minutes out on the water, get the basics down, and then, start working on progressing in that way. But just like we're saying, learn some of the basic stuff first. Don't try to overdo it all at once. But that's exactly what Chad is pointing out to, is what we're going to do in these lives throughout the year as we get together on the 22nd, is we're going to talk about the Catch 22 challenge. We're going to talk about the stuff going on, but we're going to spend the first half of the show at least going through some different lessons. Why? Because this is something that you can share with other people that may be getting into this for the first time, and at least give them something to listen to and something to think about before you get out on the water with them.
So I want to make one last observation, but the first thing I want to do is I saw a comment come up while we're talking, and I just scrolled back to where I could find it. So Michael Rodner put this topic up. He said, unless you're paddling out of lily pads in a patch in Gunnersville. So I actually want to touch on that because I have an analogy that I use. Actually, let me grab a spoon that I can see right here on the counter to make this point. So when you're paddling, whether you can see it or not, your paddle blade is a lot like a spoon. It's cupped on one side, and it's concave on one side and convex on the other side. And normally the direction that you're paddling is the direction that it's concave. So it's going to grab water and move it. And then the other side of the paddle is more convex. Okay. So it's more like if you turn the spoon upside down. So if you were to take your paddle and stick it in some of that slop on Gunnersville with the spoon right side up and pick it up, you're going to pick up a bunch of slop. If you turn that spoon upside down and stick it in there and pick it up, all that stuff's going to come right off the top. So one of the first lessons that I teach, and this will segue into the thing that I wanted to talk about, is that when I'm taking somebody on a guided trip and we're about to paddle up into the grass, the first thing I tell them is take their paddle blade and rotate it to where now your paddle blade is upside down. The reason for that is the biggest part of the paddle is on the bottom and the curved part faces towards you when you're paddling normally. So if your label's right side up, you're paddling with it correctly. The big part of the blade is on the bottom. It's going to grab the most grass, and so is the concave part where it acts like a scoop, like your spoon that I just showed you. So if you just take your paddle and turn it over, instead of taking this paddle and digging it into the slop and picking it up, and when I go to pick up my blade, I'm picking up all that crap, I'm turning it this way. So when it comes through the water, it just slides across the top. I'm getting enough resistance, but when I go to pick it up out of the water, it comes out clean. So what you want to do is turn that paddle blade forward. So now the skinniest part, the straightest edge is on the bottom. The curved part is away from the grass. Dig that corner of the paddle blade in and grab that grass and pull with your bottom hand and push with your top hand. And then you're kind of tiptoeing across the grass, and you're not sticking your blade down in there and pulling like you stick your spoon deep into a cereal bowl and pick it up and you got that big mound of cereal on it. So if you spend a little bit of time observing what you're doing and paying attention to it and then going, I'm sick of getting my arms wet, the water coming down my paddle blade, I've got crap all in my lap, I'm trying to pick up 14 pounds of grass, figure out how to make it not happen. And I just did it one time on accident and went, holy crap, this is so much easier. And then now I act like I thought of it on purpose to tell the world, look how smart I am on my YouTube videos. But really, it's that little simple stuff like that. And, that was the segue into the whole last point I wanted to make before we jump into the catch-22 and the challenge stuff. I have learned more by guiding again for the last 2 years than I probably learned in the previous 10 years going out on my own. A big part of that is when I'm guiding, unless the client's like, you need to be fishing, I want you to catch a fish, I'm usually just behind them, observing, paddling, I'm not fishing, and I'm watching what they're doing. And as I see certain things that I go, hey man, stop doing this or stop doing that. And then I watch them go, light bulb come off, catch a fish 5 minutes later. I'll give you one that happened in one of my latest guided trips in the fall last year. So I had this angler that kept getting blow-ups with the frog. Every time you get the blow-up, I'd miss it. And it was one simple adjustment. And we'll talk about this in really specific series later this year, but there was one simple adjustment that I had this angler make. And what it was is he was making the cast, he was feathering the frog to the water and starting to reel it, but he was pointing his rod directly at the frog. So when the fish blew up on it, he was in direct contact with it. There was no way for the slack to be in there. And then immediately upon setting the hook, he was jerking it away from the fish. If you hold your rod tip up or off to the side and you got it up to where there's a little bit of swoop in your line and you're reeling it, for one, it raises the nose of the bait to where it trims across the top a little better, but it also puts a little bit of delay, because if you're right here and that fish blows up, intuitively you want to reach forward hook because you can't go from here too far back. So I just had to make a simple adjustment. Hey, point 45 degrees off of where the lure is, raise your rod tips that picks the nose up. Now that frog is going across stuff easier and the hook point is in a better position. It actually makes those back legs dig in and gurgle a little more, stays in the strike zone longer. You get a higher hookup ratio. So to your point, and to the question that Marty posted, or to the statement that Marty posted about go out and just do the paddling thing, if that's all you do, you're going to learn more by doing that only for a 2-hour trip than you would in 100 trips where you're doing it while also trying to do something else. The same thing holds true to mastering a specific technique like frog fishing or jig fishing or Senko fishing. I see comments all the time where people say, I can't catch a fish on a Senko. And the response I want to make is, then you should take up golf. But that's not the response I usually make. I usually say, what other lures are you fishing while you're fishing a Senko? Oh, I usually have a jig tied on or a chatterbait or something. Okay. Automatically goes, go back to what was working. So you sit it down and you pick up the thing you have confidence in, and you have confidence in that thing because you caught fish on it. So because you caught fish on it, you fish it more. And because you fish it more, you catch more fish on it. So leave everything else at home and take jigs out if you want to get good at jig fishing. Leave everything else at home and take crankbaits out if you want to get good at crankbait fishing. Leave everything at home. And here's what I'm guilty of. If I got a spinning rod in my hand and I'm fishing some finessey little thing, it's the fastest thing. It's the last thing I pick up and the first thing I'll put back down, because I'll go default back to some power fishing presentation that feels more natural to me, feels more comfortable to me. But if I want to get good at managing and mastering fishing finesse baits, fishing forward-facing sonar baits with a spinning rod, I just got to decide to do that more and leave my defaults at home until I force myself to master that skill set. So the last lesson before we jump into the other discussion is, as you want to get better and better at a particular thing, don't try to do compound learning. We are very simple creatures in the world of being human beings. And so if you go out and you do 5 things for 10 minutes at a time, it'll take you 10 years to master all. If you go out and do that one thing for 2 hours and you do it 5 times, you got to take less trips and you'll master all 5 of those things. So spend some time learning how to paddle. Take a whole trip where you go practice getting in and out of your boat. Not right now, because you'll die. I don't care how good a dry good equipment you've got, unless you live down in South Florida. But take out your 1 or 2 rods and practice casting. Get out in the yard and try it. Look up information that's out there, or just ask the question in one of the kayak bass fishing pages, and you'll get some expert advice. And the last thing I got is, I want to challenge you guys out there that have all this knowledge and all of this information, to be more receptive to when a new person posts and says, hey, I got a question about depth finders. And you're like, oh my God, this is the 457th time that we've answered this question. Go Google it, bro. Just offer up some resources. One of the things that I'm starting to do is to create a collection of links and a collection of responses for those recurring things that I put in a Word document that's on my desktop or it's on my phone. And if I don't want to type out that 4-paragraph diatribe every time, I can just go copy it and paste it as a response, maybe adjust it slightly based on what that person's asking, that may be a little bit more specific than the previous time. So be more respectful of people asking questions and be more resourceful. Or shit, tag me in the comment and then I'll jump in there. Tag Austin, tag JT, tag Marty Hughes, tag some of these guys that are more willing to do it. Hey, at Chad Hoover, I think you should jump on this. And if I see the notification, I'll jump on there and do the best I can to answer it. But try to be more helpful as best you can. And then, like Marty said, if you always have a beginner's mindset, especially when you're learning something new, you're always going to be more successful more quickly, because if you go in thinking you know everything, you don't leave any room to learn anything. I think that about covers it.
Yes, sir. Yeah, good stuff.
What are we doing next? Are we talking about?
I think people have had conversations about some of the headgear we're wearing, because you're all bundled up like it's cold out.
Bro, it is cold. I live in a camper. I got one little heater. My little electric heater went out, and if I turn on the propane one, it sounds like a helicopter taking off in here. You wouldn't be able to hear me. So, I got a jacket on and a beanie, and I got a blanket wrapped around my legs. So it is cold.
You probably
plus I'm from the South.
You're probably wearing shorts too, though, aren't you?
Oh, I am wearing shorts. Yeah, for sure. I'm big boned, but I'm definitely I'm not from up north.
Nope, I got you. So, as you guys can see, that Chad's starting to work on getting some Fish Ops merch in. and I was blessed to get a hat and a beanie myself. So we just start working through the process of promoting fish shops more and more. And yeah, but here's a couple of nice samples, and these really came out good.
Yeah, this thing is money, and it's like a premium one with a leather patch on it. I got about 20 of these made and about 20 of those hats made to just kind of get a feel for the quality. That's the Richardson. I think it's 112, like whatever the number one that blank on in the game that fits both peanut head people and big gourd head people. That's it. I think it's the 112, but it fits me. As you can see, it fits JT. Austin also likes it. And then these beanies are like premium, nice beanies with the leather patch on the front. And so we're actually going to give away 2 of these swag packs tonight where they can pick either this hat or this beanie or that hat. Or what do you guys call this? Like we call it a beanie. What do you call it?
Beanies? Yeah, we call them beanies. I call them beanies.
Toques and all that other stuff. So anyway, beanie.
Because we had those with a little yarn ball on the top, and those we called toboggans.
Okay.
But like what you're wearing, we call them beanies or skull caps. Yeah,
you actually wear the one with the beanie on the top as a man?
When I was about 8 years old, wearing the big blue puffy jacket in the 70s.
Yeah, the only people I've ever seen wearing those ones with the pom-pom on the top are Canadians, Bills fans, which I guess Bills fans are practically Canadians, and like women and kids. But so anyway, we're going to give away the choice of this. It'll come with 2 leather patches. The leather patch is actually like the one on the front of JT's hat, and then you can put it on your PFD or something else, and then a sticker pack that also goes with it. I'm actually writing up the meaning behind the Fish Shops logo so that it'll be more on the Fish Shops page on Kayak Bass Fishing. Yeah. But what I decided to do tonight, so that I didn't put myself in the position I did last year where I gave away too much too soon, because we had a lot of people that joined in January, and by June I had overspent on the Catch 22 challenge to where then I wasn't making up as much to donate to How as I should have been. So I'm going to be more conservative this year, so we have more meat left on the bones to donate more to Heroes on the Water. And we're going to do a lot more fun stuff, like the Unlimited Challenge went from just doing it for a couple of months to doing it every single month.
Yep.
And then at the end we give a kayak away, but we're going to give away prize packages for the participants in the Unlimited Challenge each month. And so what that's also going to do is let us gather a lot of intel, gather a lot of data. We set the Catch 22 up into regions now to where you can see kind of how you play out and how you stack up against other people in your regions. And so I would love to get y'all's feedback by going to the Torqeedo Top 10 and going to the Catch 22 and scroll down until you see the regional leaderboards. I tried to make them very clear. I put the name of the region, and then right below it in all caps, you can see the names of each state associated with the region. But because there was so much of a great response right out of the gate, and because there was some really hardcore people getting out there and braving the elements, braving the weather, and putting up some really big fish, what I decided to do is draw 2 KBF lifetime memberships, because I really feel like the people that jump in on it that fast are pretty much KBF for life. So I kind of wanted to recognize that. Also wanted to use that as an opportunity to say that we're going to have the lifetime membership available from now until April 1st. We have to be careful and manage those lifetime memberships, because I'm going to be doing more and more for those lifetime memberships. And I don't want to run the risk of, like, you can put yourself out of business as a business, like doing too many lifetime memberships. They're a great way to raise a little bit of funding.
Who was it that told you that?
The founder of North American Fishermen basically told me the reason North American Fishermen went out of business, even though they had like 250,000 members, is they took so many lifetime members in the beginning that it was not sustainable. And then Ray Scott was the one that told me, do a lifetime membership, but make it available in very limited times, so only the most dedicated and hardcore people take advantage of it and will appreciate it. So anyway, the lifetime membership is available until April 1st, and it's available on the store right now. We also added the Fish and Chaos page for the KBF Club. Yep. We also added the Veterans membership and the Homeland Hero membership. One quick thing that I want to say is we're ordering new decals, And that is proving to take a little bit longer than it normally does because we've just been replenishing the same decal over and over for the last few years. But we're going to do the decal associated with the membership level and the color associated with the membership level. So if you look at the membership level, if it's red for ambassador, green for premium, the specific service for the services, and then the red, white, and blue Homeland Hero, those decals. And then once I get those in, we will start shipping the memberships for 2025 because we haven't shipped any yet because we're waiting on the new decal packages to come in so we don't have. But without further ado, let's give away 2 lifetime memberships. Let's give away 2 Fish Shop swag packs, and then we're going to give away a $50 KBF bucks. So the first lifetime membership is actually going to Alabama's own Mr. Terry Morgan. So Terry's been out there grinding it out and actually going head-to-head with Austin in a lot of cases. But Mr. Terry's a local here, and just so happens that he's a friend and somebody that I really know. But in this community, you're eventually going to know everybody. So Terry, congratulations on your lifetime membership. I will get the details emailed out to you. It's nothing you have to do. It'll automatically be taken care of on the backside by myself and Fishing Chaos. The second lifetime membership, pretty crazy on this one. This person joined KBF and actually became a member for the
Uh-oh. Am I locked up or is Chad locked up?
again. Mr. Am I back?
You're back. Yep.
Can you see
just
me?
in time. So tell the story of this one again.
All right. So this guy right here, I drew a second lifetime membership. And this time, because we didn't have a lot of entries in any specific series, I did the entries by downloading all entries, which every entry is a ticket, just like the tickets that you buy to enter an event. I downloaded the tickets. I did the randomizer. This guy won, and he legitimately just joined KBF January 3rd of this year as an ambassador member. And now he will be upgraded to a lifetime membership, which is a $650 value. So again, Mr.
That's awesome.
Castilian, you will be upgraded to a lifetime membership. It sometimes takes a couple days to populate in the system, but be looking for that by the end of the week. All right, my 2 Fish Shop swag packs are going to go. First one is going to go to Mr. Shay Wade, and that is going to be a Fish Shop swag pack. Shoot me a text at 757-348-2232. I'll get your address, and you can tell me if you want the beanie or the hat, and then we'll do the other stuff that goes along with that swag pack. And then the other Fish Shop's swag pack goes to Ron Butler Jr. I don't remember exactly where everybody else is at, but I do remember seeing that Ron was from Tennessee when I did the drawing, and that just stuck out to me because I lived in Tennessee for 10 years, and I live pretty close to Tennessee now. So again, the second Fish Shop swag pack goes to Ron Butler Jr. And then the last prize that we're going to give away, and we're going to ratchet things up as we get more entries this year. But just to kick things off, I wanted to go hard in the paint with the 2 lifetime memberships, get some swag out there to promote the fact that it'll be on the store here pretty soon, but also give away a $50 KBF buck so that I can entice folks to join in the Catch 22, but then maybe jump into some of the other tournaments like the Torquedo Top 10 or the State Challenge or the KBF Monthly State Challenge Series and things like that. And so that is going to be Mr. Corey Williams for $50 in KBF bucks. Again, that is Mr. Corey Williams for $50 in KBF bucks. So that is going to conclude the giveaways for tonight. Let me talk about the Torquedo Top 10 for a moment, because that's probably the one I get the most questions about.
Okay.
So the Torquedo Top 10 last year, by probably March, all of the Texas, California, and Florida guys had 250 inches, it seemed like. And it made it really hard for other people to feel like they were competitive. And so a lot of people were like, But what I learned is a lot of people said, hey, man, I kind of treated it like, even though I wasn't at the top, it was my own little mini top 10 leaderboard. But it would be cool if it was broken up by state so I can see how I stack up against the other people in my state. Well, I got that feedback like 3 times in 2 weeks, and I was like, you know what? I really like the idea of the Torquedo top 10 being the biggest fish and kind of the top 10 fish totals across the country.
Yep.
But I really like the idea of it being broken down by state. And it's going to be another sample point that we can use for establishing our state records as we're establishing our state records by running the state records challenge through 2025 and then establishing the official state records program for 2026 and beyond. So the cool thing about the Torquedo top 10 is it's $10 for the nationwide ticket and $10 for your state ticket. So if you don't want to fish in both, you can fish in one. But absolute worst case scenario, you can spend $20 and you're going to have 3 shots at a Torquedo 1104 prize package, which is, I think, $3,098. That's the motor, the throttle, the mount, and all that stuff, and the battery that it comes with. And so there's 3 of them. The first one goes to the person with the biggest 10 fish total nationwide. The second one goes to a drawing. So everybody that enters a 10 fish minimum, a 10 fish limit, is going to go into a drawing for the second Torquedo motor. And then we're going to do a third Torquedo motor by taking the winner of each state, put them into a separate drawing. And in that separate drawing, we're going to draw for a Torquedo for the third Torquedo. Now, if that wasn't good enough, and the fact that there's over $9,000 in prizes for, $10 buy-in, and worst case scenario, a $20 buy-in, we're also going to add a $5,000 Snake River Lockers premium fishing kayak trailer to the package, which takes us now up to around $14,000 in prizes for a $10, $20 buy-in. Actually, you could probably spend a little more than $20 if you wanted to enter like multiple states. If you're traveling and you want to see what your best 10 fish is, most people are going to fish their home state and then like do the nationwide just to combine all the states that they might go to, because you're not going to be really competitive with the person that lives in that state that fishes there the whole year if you're only there a little bit of time. But if you do the nationwide ticket, you can take all the fish you catch anywhere and combine them. Plus you're doubling your chances to win one of the Torquedo prize packages. And every ticket is a fish submission, and every ticket submission is a submission. So if you double your entries, every fish actually counts twice. So you're doubling your chances at the Torquedo and the trailer. And then we're going to try to add some more prizes to it based on participation. The other really cool thing about that Torquedo top 10 deal is it's a cool little personal top 10 fish for the year page where you can have a little mini challenge yourself versus your buddies, versus your state, versus the nation. But even if you don't compete, it's a really cool place to keep up with your top 10 fish and go out every day trying to upgrade it once you get a decent limit there. And that's a personal little victory. But last year,
real quick,
it was the number one most viewed page.
I was going to say real quick, if you have not seen Chad's post on the Snake Rivers Locker trailer, go look at it, enjoy it, and thank them for sponsoring KBF with a trailer for you guys for participating as a KBF member, because when you look at it, you will see the value in it. I don't even have to say a word.
It's actually 2 trailers, because in addition to the trailer that we decided to give up for the Torquedo top 10, basically what happened was, I said, man, really the best way that I can thank you for the trailer contribution is, would I be able to buy a second trailer from some of the proceeds from the Catch 22 challenge and make that a prize? He's like, absolutely. I'll give you the best price I can for the second trailer. So what we're doing is we're taking some of the prize money from the from the Unlimited challenge, and we're making that a prize. So there's a $5,000 trailer as part of the Unlimited series that also is giving away monthly prizes, that is also giving away the New Canoe Unlimited, and we're giving away a second $5,000 trailer for being part of the Unlimited series. Now, next season, what I'm working towards is partnering with Kayak Angler Magazine to partner up on a massive bonus structure for if you can set a stake record by being a KBF member after we set the baseline in 2025. And what's funny is we did the precedent for this over 15 years ago. If you've ever seen a copy of my book and you go to the back, you do this see this little thing right here. We did a $20,000 Kayak Angler Magazine and KBF partnership. If you read that little thing right there, it says State Record Challenge. So I am working on bringing that concept back, and hopefully it's a little more than $20,000, but it'll be really cool that if you can break a state record and win $20,000 fishing out of a kayak. And so we're using this year to set the standard for what those records are going to be so that we can gather data. So we have another good regional comparison, and so that we can just give you guys who don't care about fishing tournaments. I want you to remember, none of these are tournaments. They're challenges. You're not necessarily just competing against the people that are out there. You're competing against yourself. And every entry, you have just as good a chance of winning as somebody else. And to me, that adds a more fun element to it than going out every single time where it's an all or nothing proposition, whether or not you finish in the money. So this is more about being able to have fun, fish on your own terms, create little buddy groups, and compete against each other, compete against the folks in your state, have a chance at winning some really badass high ticket out value items, some small stuff along the way, like the ones we gave away tonight. And at the same time, just build that esprit de corps amongst your members, your fellow members of the club. So that's really what it boils down to. And so, yeah,
we have worked for months to go back and
what we ought to do is see if we can
to build KBF as the best club in kayak bass fishing that there is. But I know
I really would like to take a question or two.
Live.
I got another live stream with Stephen Kidd where we're going to talk about the evolution of kayak fishing and where I think tournaments and catch, photo, release and all that kind of stuff is heading. But let's see if we got time for one question. We'll answer that question and I'll get the heck on out of here.
All right. If anybody's got a question for Chad, because like I said, we've been spending weeks working.
Actually, I got a question for it. What other topics would you guys like to see covered on this 22nd of every month? Similar to what we did for Kayak Fishing 101. We're going to do safety. We're going to do rigging. We're going to do some of those things. But what other things would you like to see us cover in this monthly discussion so that we can make it something that more and more, people, more and more members of the community look forward to each month? And it's an educational experience, and it's an opportunity to put out information and updates about all the things going on with Fish Ops and KBF. So
So drop a comment after this live ends. Drop a comment down below, and we'll gather those notes. If you're listening on the podcast later, shoot me an email at fishermcgramps@gmail.com, and we'll collect these up, and these will be topics that we cover throughout 2025.
Or go post the comment up in the KBF members only group where the community 100%. Lives and grows and shares and all that good stuff. And I will see y'all
more mental health benefits
in the next one.
We definitely brought that one up before this live. That's definitely going to be one of the topics. All right, brother. I will let you get out of here and go hop in. And you got time to go to the bathroom real fast, get a drink, and then get ready for a next live. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll be back again on the 22nd of February, whatever the day of week that is. As always, get outside when you can and make some memories, one cast at a time. I guess that's my ending and not the KBF Fish Ops, but hey, I do what I do. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.